Everything is about to change for the Pittsburgh Penguins as we get multiple reports from insiders revealing that multiple star players will be traded. And not only that, major changes are coming to the team, not just on the ice, but the entire organization. We're going to break that all down in this episode of Hattrick HQ. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 72% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with the Pittsburgh Penguins, your favorite team around the NHL, and everything that's happening around the NHL, go down below, hit that free subscribe button, because this is the place to be for all your daily NHL content. But Mark, let's jump right into it. Lots of rumors and lots of reports about star players in Pittsburgh getting traded, and we'll break down the first one here, and it is Sidney Crosby, which is an interesting one. We'll get into that. There's stuff about Erik Karlsson and the organization as a whole. We'll get to that later in the video. Stay tuned for that because it's about the team being sold again, which could affect Sidney Crosby's future in the organization. But this is from Nick Kypreos on The Real Kipper and Bourne. He said, I am now more in the belief that Sidney Crosby will be traded. If they're really bad, the likelihood he's traded after the Olympics grows. And Elliotte Friedman went on to say, I've wondered about that. I completely agree with you. The only one thing people argue with me about is he's such a creature of habit. Do you want to trade him in season? Now, that's up for debate at this point, but there is a lot of smoke here over the last little while. And I have a conspiracy that, I think that Kyle Dubas is saying one thing and he's actually doing the other with this team to see if Sidney Crosby goes to him and he's like, listen, I'm competitive. I can't play here anymore. This team is not competitive. So I do wonder about that. But Mark, what are your thoughts on that? Because there is so many reports, now two more from Elliotte Friedman and Nick Kypreos. This seems like it's gaining traction and it has legs.
I think the big thing is when looking at Sidney Crosby, you have Malkin right next to him. Whenever you look at these two players, with him projected to not be on the Penguins next year, I think Crosby is getting closer and more open. And listen, I'm just speculating myself. I don't know, but it feels like if Malkin does walk from this team to go to the KHL or onto a new team, Crosby doesn't have a lot left. I mean, Chris Letang is here. Marc-Andre Fleury just retired. We know this team is slowly going into a retool. Crosby is slowly getting older. I mean, he still looks like he's 20 and plays like it, but I do think there's a real world. If Crosby wants one more hoorah, there's a lot of teams. I mean, his hometown team of the Montreal, or his favorite team growing up, of the Montreal Canadiens, it does get very interesting. And with all these reports coming out, I think it's slowly going closer to the day we see Sidney Crosby not in a Pittsburgh jersey.
And we know that the Montreal Canadiens could be interested in Sidney Crosby. They need a second-line center, which is weird to say. I don't think he would be a second-line center on that team. He would still be the first-line center, putting up 91 points last season on a bad Pittsburgh team. We'll get into the stats in a second. But like you alluded to, Greg Wyshynski is sharing the same sentiment. He said, I've heard too many people that kind of know him, maybe in his circle, stuff like that. We've heard a lot about his circle as well, and that they do actually think that he should move on and try to win, be competitive and win one last Stanley Cup before he retires. And he said that know the situation well, that tell me that he's been there, he's going to be there as long as Gino is there. And you just brought that up, that if Malkin is there, and it sounds like after this season, by the way, they're not re-signing him. So it's either he's going to go to the KHL, like you mentioned, or he's going to retire, and then anything can happen at that point with Sidney Crosby after this season. So it's very interesting to me. Again, I think it would be not difficult to trade Sidney Crosby at the trade deadline because, again, he has one of the most, movable contracts, I think, for a guy with his skill and point production in the entire league, making only $8.7 million, and he gives you 90 points a year still at his age. But I think it's going to get very, very interesting with Sidney Crosby specifically. But I do want to shift gears here as well because we have a lot to get to. Let us know in the comments how you feel about Sidney Crosby and his future as a Penguin. We had another video on it as well. It's seeming like it could be the Montreal Canadiens at this point. There's really only two teams I think he would waive to go to if he were to ever leave the Penguins, and it's the Colorado Avalanche, of course, and the Montreal Canadiens. So let us know in the comments how you feel about that. But the next order of business is Erik Karlsson. Kyle Dubas is not under particular pressure to have to do something with him. And this is from Chris Johnson of the Chris Johnson Show. And he said that I think Karlsson in a trade is possible, but the Penguins aren't just giving him away. They, view him as an asset. They're not going to just trade him. He makes $11.5 million. There is some retained salary with that as well. There would have to be retained salary with that as well if there was another trade. What are your thoughts on Erik Karlsson? Because, we can take a look at his stats in just a second here, but he can still offer, a competitive team decent point production even at his age and with his injury history.
I think Karlsson's prime for a bounce back. We've seen how bad the Penguins were last year. They didn't get into the playoff hunt, but still going out 53 points in 82 games. A player that can run your power play. He can still put up productive points. Yes, the cap hit says otherwise when you're looking at great contracts around the league, as he's making quite a bit. But if the Penguins want to move on from him, I think there's going to be a lot of teams, if he's retained, lined up. And I mean, if you look at a team like the San Jose Sharks, they are looking to take on cap. Now, they did retain from this already, so they're not able to. But we know there's a lot of teams that want to hit the cap floor to take on cap for contracts. So a third party comes in and you get a big retention on this Karlsson contract. I could see a lot of teams offering quite a bit, especially the closer you get to deadline.
Absolutely. And you can see it here. You only have to retain a little bit, I think. It really depends on what team is taking him if you get a third team involved. But it would have to be a significant amount all in because he's still making $10 million. There was some retained salary on the initial trade, so he's still making $10 million against the cap. So it's going to be very interesting. They're not giving him away. They view him as an asset to another team, but things are very interesting right now. They're the only team selling, the Pittsburgh Penguins, in the entire league. It's such an interesting time league-wide right now. So it's going to be interesting to see if they want to offload both of these contracts. Of course, Sidney Crosby would get a huge haul. I think Erik Karlsson would get a significant return as well. But the last order of business here, Mark, is that the Penguins might actually be sold again. So back in 2021, the Fenway Sports Group bought the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is a weird kind of thing going on there with a Boston group purchasing the Pittsburgh Penguins. But it sounds like Mario Lemieux, Ron Burkle, and David Morehouse want to buy the team back. Of course, Mario Lemieux was an owner back a couple of years ago, did end up selling the team. So they want ownership. Again, he's back in the mix. There is another group that's in the mix as well. What do you make of this? Because this could seriously affect Sidney Crosby's future as well if this goes down soon. And not only just Sidney Crosby's future, but the future of this entire organization.
I mean, I think the big thing is new owners coming in. They want to put a stamp on this team. They want to either get quickly into a retool so they can start profiting again, or if they want to go for the hoorah, they'll force a general manager to make some bad trades. But I do think with the new group coming in, I know Mario Lemieux has been around the game for so long. One of the greatest, the second best debatably all time. Lemieux could step in, look at this group and say, hey, we need to go into a retool. We want to profit in 2 to 3 years from now, move out assets that we can, get more draft capital, and let's get back in the hunt in 2 years. So it's going to be very interesting, their mindset coming in, because if the ownership doesn't want to rebuild, that kind of ties Kyle Dubas's hands, and he's not going to be able to go out and trade out all these pieces.
Absolutely. And, when the timing was very interesting for Fenway to buy the team, because the year after that was the last time that they touched the playoffs, right? So they've kind of been in this weird purgatory, kind of just missing the playoffs. And then, of course, now in a rebuild, let's call it what it is. They are in a bit of a rebuild. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that. Of course, I think Penguins fans would love Mario Lemieux to take back, partial ownership at least of the team. So it's going to be interesting. If you are a Penguins fan, let us know how you feel about that in the comments. And if you're just a general hockey fan, NHL fan, let us know down in the comments how you feel about Sidney Crosby possibly being traded, because I think things are going to go down in the next 12 months here. It's going to get very interesting in Pittsburgh. I think they want to be competitive again. I think Crosby wants to be competitive again. So let us know how you feel in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything going on around the NHL.